Hello and welcome to the On the Couch podcast, the podcast that gives you the view from the therapist chair. I'm your host, John Dennis, a licensed professional counselor. You're listening to OTC episode 22 with Don Mann, former Navy SEAL and author of New York Times best-selling book, Reaching Beyond Boundaries. Hello again to all the listeners out there. Thanks for checking in to the podcast. I'm talking to you on a beautiful night in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, the headquarters of the On the Couch podcast. So with this episode, I get to have a conversation with Don Mann, who I don't even know if I can fully go into his bio. Like, if I were to go over Don's entire bio in detail, it would literally take up the entire podcast episode. I could go for like an hour on all of this guy's accolades, all the races he's been in, the books that he's written, just so many accomplishments. It almost makes me want to cry. It just, when I look at my life and like what I've not done compared to Don Mann. So if there's anybody that should be speaking about mental toughness and reaching beyond boundaries, setting goals, it's this guy. So he is a former Navy SEAL Team 6 commando. He's renowned world-class adventure competitor. At one point, he was actually ranked 38th in the world, and as a triathlete, And he's a New York Times best-selling author. I think he says he's authored something like 20 books. He's was recently on the Outdoor Channel's show The Brigade, which is an adventure endurance race. He's done just so many things in the world of Ironmans and attempting to climb Mount Everest, and just, like I said, just unbelievable guy. So down to earth, so willing to share of his experience and his knowledge, and just cannot state enough just how grateful I am for his service to our country, our world, and just so willing to give back to people. So this topic of mental toughness and pushing yourself, I think is so needed. I mentioned in the interview, I've seen such an increase in people just struggling so much to know their purpose, find motivation, and how to go about, reaching for the things that they want. And so in talking with Don, we cover everything from, his almost dying on Mount Everest to his getting captured twice during his military service, and the concept of setting goals, micro and macro goals, keeping a positive mindset throughout all of those just unbelievable setbacks and challenges. And I really hope that you all are able to take something away from this interview. Don, thank you so much for being willing to come on the On the Couch podcast. Like I was saying, I've been looking forward to getting to sit down and talk with you off of your book and just all the projects that I know you've been involved in. So thanks for being on.
Oh, you're welcome, John. It's nice to be on here with you.
Sweet. So yeah, give us the rundown. What's your backstory?
Well, my backstory is I try to stay busy doing things I like to do, and I like to stay physical. So pretty much the theme of my life is basically staying very busy doing physical things. To narrow that down, as an athlete back in high school, and I wasn't much of an athlete really, but I did enjoy motorcycle racing and lifting weights, and I wanted to become a world champion, a motocross pro, and then world champion. And I wasn't that good, really. As a teenager, but I had a friend who was professional, and he said to me one day, he said, Don, if you want to go pro, you better start running.
Okay, and this was Dave Kelleher?
Yeah. David
Okay.
Kelleher, yeah. And David said to me up in North Haven, Connecticut, he said, you want to go pro, you better start running. So I started running, and I ran with him, and he had a lap that he did in his neighborhood. It was a mile long. And I did it, and he did it 10 times. So he ran 10 miles at a time. And I never ran, ever. And the first mile, I didn't care for it at all. It was hard. But I was running with my pro and my hero, and I couldn't wait to do what he did by running and training and becoming a pro. All I'd have to do is mimic what he did. But the first mile was hard. And the second mile was worse. I didn't like the second mile any better at all. And the third mile, I didn't like it all, and I quit. I sat on the grass, and I watched Dave run laps, lap after lap after lap. And while I was sitting there, and I'm sitting in comfortable grass, relaxed, and he's pushing himself harder and harder and harder, I realized that's the difference between someone who's successful and someone who feels a little bad for themselves, feels a little uncomfortable, and quits. And that's who I was. I was a quitter at that time. And that was one of the best lessons I ever had in my life. And that's how I got to running. And then from there, I just went on to do 30 marathons back to back, basically in 36 months. And some of those were ultras. And they were all hard and difficult, and they hurt. And while I was doing them, I didn't know why I was doing them, but I signed up for another one within the next few weeks. And but then getting into the ultra distance world, I started making these goals, like a macro goal. A macro goal was something big, and the first marathon was Boston Marathon, and I wanted to do that big race. I had no idea anybody ran 26.2 miles, but that was my macro goal. And the micro goals were the smaller stuff, the 5Ks and 10Ks, half marathon. So I looked up to that and said, how in the world am I going to do it? So I made a series of micro goals, and it worked. And before you knew it, I was crossing the line at Boston Marathon. My goal was not to stop running.
Wow.
And it worked. And time was fairly slow, 3 hours and 44 minutes. And then I thought, well, maybe next month I'll go up to Canada, do one, and maybe I'll knock off 15 minutes. So I did that back to back and knocked off an hour in a few years. But then the macro goal, instead of going faster each marathon, it was to go longer. So I wanted to do 2 marathons in a day.
Just wasn't enough for you?
I just wanted to keep pushing myself, Line up in a marathon, there's 20,000 people there. You line up at 100K, there might be 60 people there. It's just more,
wow.
It's harder to do, and it's more challenging, and less people do it, and you're pushing the edge a little bit more.
I would say that is quite the understatement, yes. And for those listeners that aren't familiar, if you really want, if you really want to feel badly about yourself, just go to Don's website. It's the US Frogman, the MANN.com, right? And just look at all of his accomplishments, like all the races, all the, yeah, that's mind blowing that you just were like, why not? Double Ironman. Let's do it.
Yep. Because then the triathlons came about. Then the next macro goal was 1 Ironman. And I trained and trained and trained. Only 15 people in the world had done one at the time. And I had no idea what I was doing. And I went out to Hawaii and I did that. And I did it in 11 hours and 41 minutes. So then my next macro goal, if I could do 1 in less than a half a day, I should be able to do 2 in 1 day, was my thinking. So then I did 2 Ironmans in 1 day. And then I started thinking, that's only a day's worth of racing. And then my racing went from 2 days to 5 days to 12 days. So that was the adventure racing. That was off the roads. It was out in the mountains in the Himalayas or Argentina, Patagonia, Ecuador, South America, somewhere, South Africa, and just really, really remote, extreme environments, desert, winter, mountainous, jungle. And you'd go 500, 600 miles with just your pack on your back. And I loved it because you pushed yourself to the point of hallucinating, bleeding, and passing out. And that never happened to me before in other sports.
You don't say. Man. Well, and so, yeah, I do want to kind of go back to the, you were saying micro and macro goals, and I've heard it referred other ways in terms of like BHAG, like big, hairy, audacious goal or things like that. Now, would you sit down and write those micro and macro goals out, or was that just sort of mentally, internally in your head, like, what's the next progression? What's the next iteration?
No, I had it pretty structured. It was like, for instance, this past year, my macro goal was to do a 750-mile paddle up in Canada. And to do that, I did, and that took a month long. And I lost 19 pounds. I got really weak and really skinny. And I was just drinking lake water and river water. And I slept outside. There were bears everywhere. I walked in the woods to use the bathroom. I walked out, and a black bear was following me out of there. And there were polar bears up there.
Sure.
It's on TV.
Okay, so this was for the brigade.
The brigade, yeah. So that was my last macro goal that I had up to that point, and now I've got 2 others I'm working on. But yeah, I'll pick up the macro goal, and then I absolutely have a series of things I want to do that day, that week, and that month for the micro goals. And it's structured, actually very structured. It drives people crazy. It drives people crazy to the point of when I have to have my coffee because I got to get out and do this event before the coffee runs out, before the fuel runs out, and then the end of the week I have to do this bigger event, and the end of the month a bigger event, and it's very structured. It always has been since the 70s for me, and now I do it on computer, of course, but I used to do it in a little book and put them. And I didn't necessarily call it macro goal, micro goal then, but I'd always pick like the Ironman or the big event and all the little things working up to it.
Okay, all right. Now, are you comfortable talking about? I mean, there was a time when you weren't that structured, when you were sort of directionless, and then you obviously found a heck of a lot of direction and motivation. Are you able to speak to that period in time?
Absolutely, John. And really, I don't mind speaking about it at all. It's nothing I'm proud of. But the reason I like to speak about it is because I know when I come in contact with children or younger kids or younger adults, and I can relate this story to them, I actually feel maybe it connects to some of them, and maybe they can see that there is a different life if they're on the wrong path.
Sure.
But I was on the wrong path. I was absolutely on the wrong path. I remember in 5th grade when our teacher was talking about drugs, how bad they were. Mm-hmm. I remember me thinking, I just want to try them all. I just was wrong. And my friends, the black leather jackets, the long hair, the headbands, the knives and the guns. I mean, that was our thing, and that was motorcycle gangs, and we lived that life because it was so much fun and exciting.
Yeah, the rebel without a cause.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was for sure. But the real thing. Yeah. But now, when I tell you the God's honest truth, looking back at all my buddies back then as teenagers, almost all of them have wasted their entire lives. And I mean that because some are dead, some died early from drugs, some died early from drinking, some have been in and out of prisons their whole lives. And one of my old buddies is okay. The rest aren't.
Okay.
And I came to the conclusion that those people who like partying, and it sounds so innocent, or those people who like drinking or taking drugs, I don't know anybody very, very successful who's done that. And I can also say everybody who has done that, they won't reach their full potential in life. They won't reach their full potential because people who didn't lead that type of lifestyle when they were younger, people my age, I did 21 years in the Navy, retired as a warrant officer. So I'm happy with that. I'm very happy with that. But other people who didn't waste their time on things that were detrimental to your life and were fun at the time, but very detrimental, they went on to be 3- and 4-star admirals. Wow. They went on to work for the presidential, the administration. So we all had the same start, but they would stay on the right road. And those of us who went off the bad road, we never got to where they got. And I believe that's the only difference, because we got involved in things that slowed down your brain, slowed down your motivation, got you in trouble, and redirected your energies in a bad direction. Now, yeah, I will admit it's fun, but it's every bit as much fun and a lot more for me to go rock climbing or skydiving or doing a 100-mile paddle.
Well, sure. I mean, you hear a lot of people talk about the runner's high, the natural high, that sort of idea. And now, to be fair to you, I mean, don't sell yourself short to the listeners here. I mean, you've been a Navy SEAL. I mean, off of a lot of what you and I are talking about is off of your book that just came out, The Reaching Beyond Boundaries, where, you talked about at first it was maybe I want to go into the police force. And then when you got into that, you kind of learned, oh, this isn't all I thought it was going to be. And that's how you kind of found your way into the military service.
Yeah, that's right. When two of my friends who I hung out with in high school were bad kids, and there was a gang next door to ours. So anyways, the gang killed those two brothers that killed the mother in a phone booth. Jeez. And then I was thinking, this is out of control. People are getting out of control. I got to walk away from this life. And a light went on, and I always was uneasy with it for the most part because I couldn't see a future. But once I started realizing that there's no life here, I got to move away. I decided to go 180 out like my hero Evel Knievel did. Uh-huh. He got rid of his black leather jacket and put on a white leather jacket and started being a role model for kids and not being the bad guy. And I thought, that's what I'll do. I'm going to go be a cop. I'm going to chase down the bad guys. I'll still have fun. I'll still get to shoot guns. I'll still be able to chase people, and it'll be exciting like it is on TV. Yep. But the first day of class, the professor said, who here wants to be a cop because of everything you see on TV? We all raised our hands. He said, well, none of that's going to happen. You pull that weapon out of your holster once, it's going to be in court forever. All you're going to be doing is directing people around manholes, and you're going to be very disappointed in your careers. And so it changed my mind. My father was a real patriot, World War II patriot, the greatest generation, and he instilled in our brains that we should all commit some time to our country. And I always thought that too. So I figured if the police force wasn't for me, I'd go join the Marine Corps. It's physical, it's tough, it's demanding, and that's what I wanted. And I think I met the only Marine drill instructor or recruiter who wasn't very squared away, because this guy didn't impress me at all, and I was just a high school kid. So I went to the Navy recruiter, and he showed me a video about SEALs. And boom, my life changed that moment. I saw these guys skydiving and climbing rocks, running down the beach, blowing things up, shooting things, very, very fit and motivated guys. That video changed my life. There was nothing I ever wanted to do but that as soon as I saw that video. And then the new micro goal became becoming a SEAL. All those races and everything became micro goals to become a SEAL.
Okay.
And then when I became a SEAL, I wanted to serve all over the world. SEAL Team 1 on the West Coast, SEAL Team 2 on the East Coast, and SEAL Team 6, the elite of the SEALs. And those are the three things I spent my time doing.
Wow, man. So going off of that, with, in your book, you talk about combat mindset. Can you kind of unpack that a little bit with, pushing yourself beyond boundaries? Obviously, I mean, it's in the title. So yeah, what does that mean, that combat mindset? And then we'll kind of get into some of the myths about, motivation and combat mindset and things like that. Yeah.
And I do talks around the country, and I used to call my talk combat mindset. And I took the word combat out because I know a lot of people don't like to hear the word combat anymore. So it could be called really anything, but the meaning of what in the SEAL teams we call combat mindset is you can basically do anything you put your mind to doing. There is not one reason you can't set out, in my words, a macro goal, and there's no reason in the world you can't achieve that. And so the mindset is, you train this guy, you give him the best parachute gear in the world, the best medical gear, the best weaponry, the best comms gear, the best training in the world. And that's not why he's a successful SEAL. He's a successful SEAL is because you can give him a knife, a K-bar, without anything else, and say, go beat this, go beat these guys. And he'll take that knife in his mouth and he'll go out and he'll do anything he can in his own power, and he'll do anything he can to achieve that objective and beat that objective, the mission there. And that's what the mindset is that nothing should stop you. And it's up to you to figure out ways to get over any obstacle in your way that could possibly at one time made you think it could stop you. And so I've taken that SEAL combat mindset. I had it before becoming a SEAL because I was doing Ironman events and these long races before I was a SEAL too. I needed that mindset just to finish SEAL training. And then I had it through SEAL training, and then everything I've done since SEAL training and since the SEALs, I've needed that same mindset, that can-do mindset, that anything's possible. sometimes it gets you in trouble. For instance, I went up to Everest to climb Mount Everest a couple of years ago, and I came very, very close to dying. I got rescued off the mountain, and my lungs filled with fluid. I was drowning in my own fluids. I was exhaling fluids. My brain filled with fluids. I lost my memory and my color vision. I couldn't think, and I collapsed and went unconscious up there. And people say, I'm so glad you didn't push yourself any harder. Well, that was beyond my control. I had nothing else. If I had gone any higher, I would have died. If I had stayed there any longer, I would have died. So I don't look at that as a failure. I look at that as an opportunity that I had to do something I wanted to do all my life. My body didn't allow it. So I just backed off, and now I'm just doing the 14ers, Actually, behind me, there's a map, the 54 14,000 footers. I've done 20 of them. I hike up and run down this, and so I'm going to do 3 of them next week out in Colorado. And my pulmonologist said, if I'm you, I want to go over 10,000 feet. I said, well, the 14,000 footers don't affect me. I've done 5 of those since Everest, so I'm going to do more. So those don't affect me. So my macro goal now is to get all 54 of those and to try to hit 60 miles an hour on a bicycle. And I've never gone 60 miles an hour on a bicycle. I went 51.3 miles an hour last week, which is faster than ever in my life. And I paddled 750 miles last August, which is the longest I've ever paddled. So I'm not even using age as an excuse not to beat new macro goals.
It's just a number, right?
I'm not making any excuse. Yeah, my body gives up. That's one thing. But I'm not, my mind, and everybody can do this. You can get your mind stronger than your body because your mind can get stronger each and every day. At some point, your body will give out. That'll happen, but your mind can get stronger each and every day. And once it gets stronger than your body, eventually you will hurt your body because your mind keeps going, but your body might give up.
And I would say for a lot of people, it's typically the other way around, that especially without working on that and training your brain, our brains kind of give out. They're a little wimpier, I would say, than our body a lot of times. We will tell ourselves, oh, we can't do that, or we should stop, or things like that. I think a lot of times, I know you talked about in your BUDS training of trying to get to that place where you, they basically like threw you in the pool and you had to like swim farther than you've ever swum, without oxygen, basically. And you just finally get to that point where you have to give up, or like physically your body just gives out.
I like the way you worded that too. That was a good way to word it. I think I agree with you that I think a lot of people's bodies are way stronger than their minds because they haven't pushed their bodies. They don't really know what their bodies are capable of doing. And I think most people are probably like that. But the mental strength training you can do, like I mentioned earlier, it can happen every day. And the visualization, I think, is so important. I did it before SEAL training, and I do it for mountains and adventure races and long events. I picture it, and I try very, very hard to get very vivid imaginations going and thoughts on how hard this is going to be and how difficult this is going to be, what I'm going to feel and what's going to hurt, what's not going to hurt. And so when I did that for BUDS, I did that for 4 years for BUDS. And every day at BUDS, every day was hard. There wasn't an easy day there for the 6 months you're there. But every day was hard. But every day I'd get back to my rack, back to my bed, and I'd think, boy, today was hard. But it wasn't as hard as I planned it or expected it to be. Every day was like, so I always did my visualization. So the events were much, much harder. And then when it comes time to stepping up to the line and beginning the event, you give it everything you have, and it's still not as bad as you expect, and it's kind of a relief. And I always say, like in the double Ironman, at mile 32 on the marathon, I started dry heaving a little bit and spitting up some bile. I saw the white stars, and I did pass out. And I just passed out for a couple of minutes. And I got up, and I looked around. I saw bicycle riders riding by and runners. And I was thinking, what in the world am I?
You just needed a little nap, that's all.
Yep. I realized if you push yourself too hard, and it is too hard, that your body will give you the break, and you'll pass out if you need the break. And it taught me a good lesson because all the years before that, if I ever felt like I was hurting too much, I was too uncomfortable, or I was pushing too hard. And if I did slow down and give myself a break, I was wrong. Because if you do push it too hard, if it actually is too hard, your body gives you the break and you pass out and you get your needed break. And you get up, and I finished the double Ironman. And a double Ironman, that's 4.8 miles of swimming, 224-mile bike ride, then 2 marathons, 52.4-mile run. So I was thinking at the 32-mile mark, I started thinking, I have less than a marathon to go. It seems so short, because in my mind, the marathon was so little at that point.
Yeah.
And so the training really, really works, that mental training.
Well, and yeah, I'd like to ask a little bit more about, you mentioned the visualization. I've heard of definitely like visualizing the positive way. It's interesting. So you kind of mentally prepare yourself for the negatives of like, this is going to hurt and this is going to happen, so that when you're actually going through it, it's not as bad as what you prepared for. Is that my understanding?
That's right. And what the negatives and the positives, for instance, using SEAL training, checking in what it'd be like going to the quarterdeck and checking in with the SEALs at the quarterdeck, and how my uniform was going to look, and how my kit bag was going to be, and how I'd walk and march, and even those little minor details, just so it went through my mind once as a practice. So when it happened again, it was the real thing. And teaching combat medicine and tactical combat casualty care medicine, I teach this quite a bit to government and military people. Right before going up to a victim or someone who's been badly beat up or blown up or shot up or a car accident or something, you have to go through the visualization over and over and over. And that could be with mannequins, it could be with moulage and the fake blood and everything. So when you go for it for real, you're much, much more comfortable. And the same thing happens. You don't have to walk through quarterdecks and go do a bunch of push-ups in the backyard at the grinder to prepare for your first day at Buds. You can go through it in your mind, and you can really go through step by step by step. Then when it happens, it's not your first time. It takes some shock and awe away from it.
And just for any in the civilian community out there, so BUD stands for the Basic Underwater Demolitions, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL School.
Okay. Yep.
Sorry about that.
No. So what are some myths that you find people fall victim to with that perseverance and the mental toughness?
I think one myth is they think you're a masochist, a sadomasochist, and you like pain. Mm-hmm. And there might be a little bit of truth to both of those, but it's not really liking the pain. It's feeling comfortable with it and knowing, actually, I don't like it. It hurts. And I welcome the pain, though. I look at any challenge, I say, okay, I humbly sit by myself, I bite my lower lip, I don't say anything, I don't act cocky or arrogant or anything, and I look at the instructors, or I look at the mountain, or I look at the 600 miles we're going to do, and I think this is really, really going to hurt, but anything worth doing hurts, and I welcome the pain. If it's too much, I'll simply just pass out on you.
And I had the amazing opportunity to hear Don speak at the Lemon Tree Gallery there in Virginia, and I'll never forget you talking about coming to that mindset of, all I have to do to win the competition is make myself hurt worse than you, and if I can, outwork you, I'll beat you. So yeah, that idea of like becoming comfortable with the pain.
Yeah, and it's really. And it's like cold water. Everybody thinks SEALs like cold water. We hate cold water, but we're used to being uncomfortable in it. And nobody likes going swimming or diving when you get out of the SEALs because you're so tired of the cold water. But you're comfortable with the pain. You don't like it. It's not like a masochistic, I can't wait to hurt myself. It's I'll deal with it because the reward is worth it. Mm.
And is it safe to say another myth? I know you talk towards the end of your book about touching the line but not going over the line. I think a lot of people believe that if you don't cross the line, then you're weak. You gave up or you quit or things like that.
I probably one of the smartest lessons I ever taught myself was I always believed, and I pushed my teammates this hard as well, I always believed that there is a line, and if you go over that line, you're going to bleed, hallucinate, or pass out, or do damage to yourself. And I'm talking doing physical things.
Yeah.
And it can, going over the line can happen if you're an accountant or a doctor or a painter or a piano player. By doing too much and you go over the line, something else will fail. But in the physical world, doing too much, body functions start failing, tendons, ligaments, joints, muscles, your brain activity. A lot of things will start failing. And I did go over the line basically monthly for a couple of decades. And I just felt that if I didn't go over that line, I wasn't giving it my all. And at one point in my life, I was training for a triathlon much, much larger than the Ironman. And I was training about 15 hours a day. And I just couldn't keep the calories in. I went below 140 pounds. I weigh 185 now. And my liver and kidneys were shutting down. My skin was turning green. I got a bunch of injuries. And I woke up in the hospital with the worst case of overuse syndrome they've ever seen at Balboa Hospital. That was over the line.
Did you get a certificate for that? Or
No. Yeah. But I was thinking nobody is going to train harder or more than me, was my mindset. And I was going to go against the top triathletes in the world, but none of them were going to train harder or more than me. And that's what everybody was saying back then, too, that there's nobody who trains as hard or as much as I was when it came to doing long-distance triathlons. But I ended up in the hospital, and I couldn't make the race. And I almost died because my liver and kidneys were shutting down. So, and that's one example. I've got a lot of those. That's the worst of them all, though.
Okay.
Because I went over the line, almost died. And I preached so many times to so many teammates and co-workers, co-race workers, that I was going to push you guys this hard too. And when I got to the SEAL teams and started leading the PTs, I did it to them too. So I always pushed it so hard, so we're always going over the line. Now, I don't think that way at all. Now, the way I think, I believe, is much, much smarter. And for longevity, it works a lot better. And that is, you have to identify where that line is. We all have a line as a father, a doctor, a lawyer, whatever we are, an athlete. And if you give too much, it's going to cause some sort of damage somewhere in your life. But to identify where that line might be, go up and touch it and then back off. Identify it. You're not leaving anything in the tank. You're not leaving a void there. You're giving it your full, but you're not going over it. And that line changes throughout our lives. It goes higher, it goes lower, but not to go over it. And then I think you can do that for a long, healthy lifetime.
Sure.
And now that's what I do. I identify the line, I touch it, and I back off. If I go a little harder, it's too much. It's too much. I can't go any further.
And in order to do that, have you had to develop accountability in your life with somebody else to for them to be able to call you out and be like, hey, Don, I think you're charging too hard on this one. You need to back off a little bit, or that's internal that you have that conversation with yourself, or yeah.
It's been internal my whole life. I've never really been close enough to anybody where they would know how much I was able to give or not give. Okay. I think, and I don't mean to say I've been a hermit all my life, but I just feel that it's such a personal thing, and it can change even day to day. So that's always been something it's just been myself who's been aware of that.
Sure. And I know in your book where you reference this touching the line but not going over, in a physical sense, I mean, you talk about the increased irritability, some of the physical and emotional symptoms that point to, hey, the check engine light is going off. You kind of need to pay attention to this. Yeah,
boy. So I think anybody going over their line there, irritability is definitely one. You start getting restless. You don't sleep well. And then that's just the start of it. Those are just some of the subtle signs that start. And then it gets worse. And it gets worse, and people don't really want to be around you because you just things set you off. It also happens like that for a lot of athletes who can't get their workouts in. I mean, I know I'm like that.
Yep.
You can't get your workouts. The same thing happens. But when you start giving too much or pushing too hard, you can't focus. You get irritable. You can't pay full attention on any topic, and those are some of the early signs. Some of the later signs, I had balked pretty hard on a mountain down in Patagonia about 10 years ago, and I was pushing and pushing and pushing, and I was laying on my side. I had tunnel vision. I couldn't see. I couldn't move my eyes left or right. I heard a good SEAL buddy of mine say, "We got to get him off the mountain before he dies." And I was freezing cold, but I didn't care, and I couldn't move. And that was going over the line, and way over.
Definitely. I'd say most people in civilian application don't ever get to that point.
But you know what I think is worse? Here's what I think. I think the real tragedy for most people is not that they set their goals too high and they don't reach them.
Yep.
I think the real tragedy for most people, almost everybody, they set their goals low, they reach them, and then they're happy with themselves, where all of this goes voided and they don't get any of that filled. And I think that's even worse. So going over the line on occasion, that might be accidental, but at least that void is not going to be there, and you can fulfill that with life that matters to you, things that are important to you in your life. You can put whatever it happens to be.
You're listening to OTC Episode 22 with Don Mann, author of the New York Times best-selling book, Reaching Beyond Boundaries. We'll be back after a brief word from our sponsor.
Life is hard, but Parenting and Family Solutions is here to help. Our board-certified counselors are easy to talk to and offer a safe, encouraging environment to help you with your unique needs. We specialize in helping clients of all ages deal with depression, anxiety, marriage issues, screen addiction, and ADHD, just to name a few. We now have daytime and evening appointments available in Harrisburg and Lancaster and accept most major insurance plans. Visit our website to learn more at www.parentfamilysolutions.com or give us a call at 717-602-5560. Let us help you build a stronger family and a healthier you.
So on my end, as a mental health counselor, I've seen so much increase in the last 10, 20 years in terms of failure to launch. Kids that they just don't have motivation, they don't have a purpose, they can't seem to find that. Are there any tools or any advice that you can give to help the unmotivated find motivation, or have there been ways that you found that help them figure that out?
The last time I had an experience with a child who was something like what you just said, he was a good kid. He worked out. He did okay in school. And he went off to New York to be a model. Mm-hmm. And then while he was there, he came from a good family and all. While he was there, he became a heroin addict. And he started stealing, and he started stealing from his family. And it was a terrible, terrible situation for the whole family. So he got into a rehab center in Denver, Colorado. And I spoke with the family members, and I told them how sorry I was that their son ended up there. And I said, if you would allow me to talk to him on the phone and get to know him a little bit, and if the rehab therapy center would allow me, let me take him up a mountain just for an easy hike up one of the 14,000 footers. And I know he's probably in terrible shape and all. But if we could sleep on the side of the trail, get up around 4 a.m, start hiking, and then before you know it, you see the sun coming up over the horizon, then you see the other mountain peaks poking through the clouds. Once he summits, he's going to see his life differently. And he may not want to do it again, but he'll value that experience for the rest of his life. And so I went to the rehab center, and I spoke to all these addicts. And boy, John, I felt so bad for those young kids. They're all young kids, and they all look like they just made a mistake in their life, and now, boom, they're trapped. And, of course, now that's worse than ever in our history of our country, and it's so, so sad to see, because I can see how easy it can happen. And when a kid is like that, though, there is a way out. There is definitely a way out, and his family and his co-workers or his friends or whoever they may be, they have to look at him saying, I know we can help him. There is a way to help him. And in Ian's case, We ended up climbing 4 mountains that weekend, and he had a blast, and he went off to become a paramedic and a firefighter after that experience. And It was a very, very good experience for him. I think for any child that somebody can get to a child, somebody has to look for an opening where they see that there can some light could be coming from that opening, where they can take that and show the child or the young adult a different world than just the world of not being focused or just not being on the right path, because everyone has a path. And once they find it, they can shine, and they'll be so much happier than just, doing nothing with their life. Mm-hmm. They won't be happy for the rest of their life if they just never find the right path, or if they get on the wrong path with drugs and alcohol and crime.
Sure.
Even worse.
Well, and so some of what you did for him is, what we would call adventure-based learning or adventure-based counseling. So like Outward Bound or, programs like that where, they kind of provide some of those peak experiences, sort of get them out of their element and teach them some other ways of thinking about things. So that's so awesome that you were able to, break through with that and kind of show him, hey, like this is some of what's out there. If you want a different path, this is an option.
And there's another story that I can share. There was a very, very close family member of mine whose father had committed suicide, and he had hung himself, and he had 2 sons, and one of the sons went right to drugs and basically lost his mind.
Sure.
He was just getting ready to graduate from getting a maritime engineering, electrical engineering degree. He was just weeks away from graduating. Jeez. And turned to drugs. The other son turned to sports. So fast forward, then he applied for the Naval Academy and got in. Fast forward from that, then he became the decathlete champion of the U.S. Naval Academy. And I went to his graduation 2 weeks ago and did a talk for the Naval Academy.
Wow.
And being around those 1,100 kids at that Naval Academy, their faces are glowing, they're shining, and they have all this motivation. It's good, positive energy. And they've got these commissions in the military, the Navy and the Marine Corps. They're going to serve their country and their officers. And they're on a path, and that path could set them off for the next 40 years because they found the right path. And the guy I'm telling you about, Ben, he graduated one of the toughest colleges in the country and got a career.
Sure.
He could have went the other way just as easily. He could have went and said, I'm just going to party for a while. So kids do have choices. And sometimes it just takes other kids or people like us, maybe their parents and family, to adjust them and push them a little bit on the right path. And then once they're on that path, they can excel to no end.
Sure. Man. So looking back over your life, all the different challenges you've faced, I mean, you've been captured before, you've been in some pretty hairy situations. I mean, obviously you described the near-death stuff with Mount Everest, but would you say the most dangerous that you had to overcome was yourself as a young adult, that directionless version that was in the gangs and the motorcycles? And
yeah, I would say that actually, because the person I was back then, without a path or without direction or without any light to follow, or in any sense of the word, I was just one accident away from being in the grave, and I didn't really care. I just wanted to have fun. It's all I cared about. So that was, and ever since that, when I found the SEAL teams and everything else changed in my life at that point, then I cared a great deal about everything. But when I was just living haphazardly, just going as fast as I can, going as high as I can off of jumps, and partying as much as anybody wants to party, to me, it didn't matter if there was a tomorrow. You didn't think that far ahead. It was just live for the moment, and there wasn't a path that you could even picture. So yeah, that was the way what you just said. That was probably the most dangerous point in my life, because I could have stayed on that very easily, or could have been addicted to something. Yeah, or got off it or something.
Well, and to kind of tie it back, I mean, you didn't have at that point any micro or macro goals. Like there wasn't any goal beyond just do what feels good right now in the moment. So
right.
Okay, yeah.
Instant gratification, right? The whole world of instant gratification. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how do you find balance for pursuing your goals? You know, a lot of the things are you're so focused and so dialed in. How do you balance some of the other stuff, the work, the relationships, that kind of thing?
Well, it is a priority for me to make sure. I believe that you have 24 hours in a day, and the goals that I set now don't take 24 hours a day. And I do leave time for friendships and, relationships and other things. But there's always, I wake up, I don't go to bed at night until I know exactly what the workout's going to be the next day, because I have to work toward the next micro goal.
Okay.
My day is completely unsettled until the workout happens. And I'm just very, very, and I knew that from 7th grade on that's how it was going to be, that I had to work out. I wanted to work out. When I was young and didn't care, I just wanted to be strong and have big arms. It was just all about looking good in a black T-shirt and black leather jacket. But now, after that, it was to functional fitness, so I could work out to do things better.
So you're saying typically you'll mentally go over it at night before you go to bed? Because I know in your book, you talked about, Tim Allen and his experience being arrested back in the 70s. It sounds like he does it in the morning where he comes up with the goal.
Yep, he does. Yeah, that's how he did it. I don't like going to bed at night unless I know what I'm going to do from the moment I wake up. And It drives people crazy because I got to get up and go do it.
Okay.
Just it's the way I'm wired. I'm not going to change either. It's just the way it is.
At least you know that.
Yeah.
So I have a section of our show where we have listeners send in questions. So I wanted to tackle some of those, and I know a number of these do come from the military community. So I'll leave these anonymous. But how do you prepare yourself when you have just a super daunting task ahead of you? And it sounds like we've touched on that a bit with you kind of mentally run it through visualization.
Absolutely. Visualization, I looked at the task. I looked at how much time it's going to take to accomplish the task, what I'll have to do micro goal wise to accomplish all those micro goals to get that task or that macro goal accomplished. And I guess the first question is it going to be worth the time and the effort to do it? A lot of times, things come my way and I say, I'm not interested in it. I don't want to invest the time or energy in that, because if I did, I could be doing, actually, that happened to me this week. I was asked if I would sign up for a race that goes to the center of the earth. There were 3 teams, National Geographic's putting it together.
I'm sorry, you're going to have to repeat that. What?
Yeah, it's something that's brand new. It's $1 million prize if you finish, and it's a race to the center of the earth. And they haven't announced the locations, but they take one team maybe in China, one team in Alaska, maybe one team down toward the South Pole. And you're racing toward the center of the earth, and you all have different types of terrain and things to manage, but it's $1 million prize. And the second I heard about it, I immediately signed up for it. And they asked me, they said, can you commit to this? I said, well, actually, I'm already committed to it. If this is all I would like to do, actually, I'll wipe everything off my schedule for the next year to do this. And it was kind of a show like The Brigade. The Brigade asked me, are you ever going to do anything like this hard again? I said, to tell you the truth, I'd like to do 3 of these a year. So for those things, I'll wipe everything off my calendar and schedule to do those, because that's to me, that's living, and that's life, and that's being out there in the elements and surviving in the wilderness and being out there. I love nature and I love being outdoors. And then come back and friends afterward, and before you visit with family and friends. But during that time frame, when something that big comes at my fingertips and I can do it, I jump on it. And those experiences, to me, experiences are worth everything. Having nice cars and nice homes and things like that aren't that exciting to me. I mean, I just like the experiences.
I got to be honest with you. I'm even gladder now that we found the time to carve out to have you on the show before you go on that challenge. So, thank you.
The brigade. They said you were just on one of these shows. We don't know if we could have you on this show as well, so that might stop me. But thanks for.
That's almost like like the Tom Brady Super Bowl. You just won. Or, what are you going to do? I'm going to Disney World. Like your answer is like, I'm going to do 3 more of these a year.
Yeah,
man. So how do you stay motivated when you're in the middle of that crazy daunting task or something like that? Yeah. What do you do to stay motivated when you're in the suck?
We do have the ups and downs, the peaks and the valleys, the ebbs and flows and all that. That does come your way for sure. But there just can't be any remote possibility at all you'll ever in your mind even think about not finishing. It's got to be part, even in going back to SEAL training, buds, there were many times I wished I would just like pass out in the cold water because it was so painful. And I knew they'd pulled me out, but I never thought about quitting. You can never think about quitting. You have to completely remove anything in your brain that ever resembles the thought of quitting. Because being a quitter in the SEAL teams is the worst word you could ever use, is quitter.
Sure, yeah.
And just can't quit. And so you just have to, if your body breaks down, that's one thing. But if you have a goal, you have to get into it. You know it's going to be lows and highs and lows. When you do have those lows, the highs feel so much higher too. And you just can't take your mind off the prize, the finish line or the summit or whatever it happens to be. You can't.
Now, to throw back to your book, the one story you tell about being captured, you talk about two soldiers that were with you, and they did not have that mindset. Like they seemed very negative, at least they're like, oh, we're going to die out here. Great. We're going to get shot. We're going to, this is how our life is going to end. I imagine that's even harder to maintain that positive mindset when when you're saddled with people that are very negative.
It's funny. I have been captured twice, and once I was captured with 4 guys, and nobody thought we were going to be killed. And we were held at gunpoint, AK-47s. People had the fingers on the triggers, held overnight. They told us they were going to shoot us in the backs, and none of us thought we were going to get killed. We all had the right mindset. But the time you're talking about, the story I put in Reaching Beyond Boundaries, there were 3 of us, and I still can't talk about the exact location or too much about that yet. But there were 3 of us, and we're being chased down the streets, and it was by bad civilian policemen and the militia, and brought us to this little makeshift prison. It's not even prison, it was a jail cell, a holding cell. There was one armed officer at the front entrance, and that person brought us to our cell, and 3 of us were in there now, and one of the guys was praying and one was crying, and we didn't know what was going to happen, and I was just doing dips on the bed and push-ups, and we're all taking care of, trying to deal with our stress in separate ways. And they did let us go. They robbed us, they took everything we owned, and then we got put back in the pickup truck, and we got dropped off in the desert, and we lived.
Well, and to kind of go back to it, I mean, I imagine you would have been done for if you had adopted the same mindset as your 2 buddies of like, this is it, we're not going to make it. Yeah.
You can't think, in both of those captivity situations I was in, you can't ever think it's all over, you're done, they're going to kill you. Both times they released us, and we didn't give up, and we didn't give up hope. That's part of combat mindset. I might get hurt, but I won't be killed. If I am hurt, I'll be taken care of, and I'll be treated later. I'm going to win the situation. That's part of the combat mindset.
And, again, most people in civilian life aren't dealing with life or death. short of, yes, military objective mission you have to complete, how do you know when it's time to push through and when it's time to, okay, I need to adjust the goal?
Boy, I've never been asked that, and I think I have a really good answer for it, though. There are two SEER schools, and that's survival, evasion, resist, and escape. There are two different types of SEER schools in the U.S. that the military and high-risk people go to. And one of them is the basic SEER school where, you go on the waterboard and you get tortured pretty badly, but you learn so much. And what they say is whatever happens in captivity, don't give away the secrets. Don't give away the secrets. Give away a little bit. Like you can name rank, social security number, that type of thing. Give away a little bit, but don't tell them who you are, what you're doing. Don't tell them who your mission is or where the teammates are or anything like that. Don't give them anything. Just give them a little bit of information. But before they go to hurt you, as an example, cutting off a finger or cutting off a hand or something, before they're about to hurt you, then give them a little bit. And that's one mentality of survival training, is just give a little bit, but always look for an opportunity to escape, stay quiet, stay gray, stay under the radar, always look for a place to escape or a way to escape or a means to escape, and don't give away anything unless they're about to cause you a little bit of a harm. Mm-hmm. The other mentality is more like a white collar, more like a business type SEER school, where if you're an executive or something and you're captured, and it was just how to different means of staying calm, just keep this going. How am I going to work my way out of here? The earlier I'm captured, the more of an opportunity I'm going to have. And there are ways out of here. There's a bunch of ways that are going on behind the scenes, and they go a little bit more in detail. But both of those schools combined, you learn all these stories about how people have gotten out of these situations and how you can get out and how you can make a survival situation, bearable by knowing that there's a way out and not to give up. And and I think that might be a good way to answer that question. If it answered it at all, I'm not sure, but I think that's the way I know best to answer that one.
Okay. And so one of the final sets of questions talks about, in the military, members have an inner sense of that duty to persevere. This is the objective. I took an oath. I have to do this. But there's also a lot of new data about, military members who stuck with, or, they didn't get help, mentally, PTSD wise, because of that duty to persevere. Any advice on, when is it time to seek that professional help or counseling? And I don't know if you can speak to that at all.
Oh, I sure can. To tell you the truth, I kind of look at the PTSD issue as something that people absolutely need and require, and I wish they had gotten it sooner for a lot of cases. And I also see it as every veteran now, regardless if they've served overseas or did 2 years as a reservist behind a desk, I hate to see that being taken advantage of. And I know it's being taken advantage of in a lot of cases. I had a friend who got the position of director for a regional hospital as a VA director. He's a special forces colonel, and he was very decorated. He saw a lot of battle, and he got PTSD, but then he got the job of a lifetime. And he quit after a short amount of time. He said, I love helping the vets who needed it. What I couldn't take is all the vets who didn't need it and taking advantage of the system. This give me generation, this entitlement everybody has. I went 20 years after getting out. My father was World War II, the greatest generation. And when the greatest generation, as we know, D-Day 75th anniversary is this week, those 18, 19, 17-year-olds jumped off the boats. They were going into a hail of gunfire where 90% was fatality rate in some cases. And they knew they had to go get the guns up top, and they'd climb the cliffs. And 90% of those guys didn't make it. They didn't slow down. They all went there. They did it for the country back then. People thought God, country, family was what was precious in life. It's a little different now, I know, to a lot of people. But those guys came home and went right to work. They didn't need anything. They didn't need benefits. They didn't have entitlement. My father broke his back the last day of the war. He never would go for VA assistance. He didn't want anything that somebody who really needed it should get. And that's how I grew up thinking. And I went out to San Diego last year to talk to two really close friends of mine, both Navy friends, and they both have PTSD very, very badly. Very badly. Lesions on the brains and everything. And they both said to me, said, Don, you should get checked for PTSD. I said, no, I'm fine. I don't have anything wrong. They said, no, seriously, you should go. I said, no, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to be one of those veterans who's just looking for a handout because I served. I served in very easy years. 77 to 98, we weren't that busy. We didn't get busy until after I got it.
Relatively speaking.
Yeah. But I said, I don't need anything. I've been doing crazy things way before I was a SEAL, and I've been doing them since I was a SEAL. So why do I expect anything from the military? Anyways, I promised my two friends I would go get checked. One psychologist within 2 minutes said, you absolutely have PTSD. And she sent me to a psychologist in Virginia Beach. And I told her kind of what I'm telling you. I said, I don't believe in this. I believe it's such a broad definition. Everybody can say they have PTSD now. Everybody's entitled to something. I'm against the whole thing. But I promised two friends I'd get checked out. She said, on a scale of 0 to 100, we don't have anybody in the 100 range, but the 90 percentile is someone coming in a wheelchair babbling. We don't get many of those people. We do have some SEALs who come in here and they stand in the corner because they don't want to be in the window where they can get sniper fire, or they don't want to stand in front of the door in case the door gets blown to pieces. And those people have it really, really rough. But yeah, you definitely have it. And so anyways, I just recently got diagnosed with PTSD, and I don't agree with it. But yeah, so I know how the system works for that. And I do believe, Rob O'Neill, who shot bin Laden, Navy SEAL who killed bin Laden. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's been on over 70 missions where over 70 people have been killed. Bad guys, a lot of bad guys, or the enemy, I should say. So, and what is that to a person's psyche? He can't be normal. Even though he's fine physically, he looks fine physically. How does Marcus Luttrell, lone survivor, in Texas, his 4 teammates, him and 3 teammates are up there and they get caught, and 3 of them are shot, and he's witnessing their deaths, and a helicopter comes in to rescue them, and they get shot out of the sky, and they're all killed. And the villagers who take care of them, a lot of them are killed. How does a person deal with situations like that? Well, in my mind, we have the capability to handle much, much more than most of us have handled. I haven't seen that much. Mm-hmm. Rob O'Neill has, Marcus Luttrell has, in this degree. And people like that absolutely need help because a person's not used to being exposed to all of that. Marcus Luttrell, with his survivor's guilt, I can't even imagine how bad that is for him.
Sure.
He's thinking, how do all these people die for me? And Rob O'Neill, he's got a target on his back. The President of the United States put out that SEAL Team 6 killed bin Laden. Everyone in the world knows SEAL Team 6 did it. Everyone knows it was Rob O'Neill, and Rob O'Neill has a target on his back, so does his family. What does that do to a person? So those people like that, they need help. And they might not go get it because people like that, and those are extreme examples, they're taught to be tough, taught you don't need help, you're strong. But people do need help when they're and on the other hand, I think a lot of people are getting help who don't need it.
Sure. I mean, there's always those, outliers, at either ends of the spectrum. I imagine kind of going back to some of what you had said before with touching the line but not going over it. I mean, at least in my line of work, a lot of what I've seen with PTSD is very similar, where like you're very irritable, you don't have much of a sense of humor anymore. A lot of signs are showing up that you're kind of struggling in day-to-day life. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I would say so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do people find you? How do people get in touch with you? I know you do a lot of speaking engagements as you reference. How do people book you for that?
Usually what people do, I'm on a bunch of different speaking websites, but that's the complicated way, and plus that costs more money because they get a huge commission. I think the best way is just contact me directly, and that could be if you put Don Mann, Mann, motivational speaker, in Google, my website pops up, and that website is US Frogman, with like my last name is spelled MANN.com. And I think that's probably the best way, just through the website, and I just answer everything.
Okay.
And it doesn't go through some office personnel or anything like that. And I appreciate you asking that. I love speaking to kids. I spoke with Brooke Shields' daughter a little while ago, and Christy Brinkley's daughter, and the Naval Academy, sports teams, colleges, high school graduations. I love speaking with kids and people, all types of people, veterans. A lot of times the talks I do are big businesses, though, and medical.
Okay. Are you able to share any of the projects that you're working on for the rest of the year? I don't know if you have like non-disclosure agreements or
no, at
anything.
All. So the Brigade is ongoing. It's an 8-part series on TV on the Outdoor Life channel. And not many people get that channel, so I don't get it. I had to pay $7 a month so I'd get it so I can see it. And so I saw it last night, and then there's one more episode coming Monday night.
Don, you gotta work on your negotiation skills. If you had to pay $7.99 to watch your own self on,
yeah. So that part's closing up. I also had a bicycle built from a Tour de France winner, a Tour de France stage winner who beat Lance Armstrong in a race, and he built a bicycle for me because I got a 90-tooth chain ring made in New Zealand to put on this bicycle, because when I came back from Everest, I decided I can't go up to altitude anymore, but since I live in Cape Charles, it's flat here, I should be able to go real fast on a bicycle. So I'm trying to reach 60 miles an hour on that bicycle. Boy, that is hard, because I did 50.1 mile an hour. I'm sorry, 50.2 miles an hour, the fastest I've ever gone on a bicycle. And then I trained 1,000 more miles, and I went out again for another time trial and went 51.3 miles an hour. So it's taken 1,000 miles of training to go 1 mile an hour faster.
Wow.
So I'm only at 50.3 now, but the bike shakes and it's scary.
It's like you're hitting Mach 3. Yeah. So I think you kind of answered my next question. So you can't do altitude anymore because of 2016 and what happened on Everest. So I was going to ask, like, what's next? Like space? Are you going to do the Red Bull plummet from? So you can't do that, right? Because you can't handle the up. Now you're going to the center of the Earth.
The 14ers aren't bothering me at all. I can do those, and I've done 5 of them since Everest. But I'll do 3 next week, actually. I'm doing it next week out in Colorado.
Okay.
But I don't want to push it beyond that, because once you get HAPE, high-altitude pulmonary edema and cerebral edema, you're more likely to get it again. And it's deadly. And once you get cerebral edema, it's deadly.
Yeah.
You're more likely to get that again. So I'm not good. My body said no, so I'm not going to do it. That's something I keep beyond my control. So I'll do the bike riding, and I'll do the other 14,000 footers. And I just finished book number 19. I got contracted to do another one this morning, so I'll be working on my 20th book, which is hard for me to believe.
Yeah.
My high school teacher would be rolling over in her grave if she ever thought that would happen. But that's the macro goals, I hope to write an article someday, and I got an article written in Navy Times, and then I hope to write a book someday, then I hope to write a series of books, and a series of fictional and nonfiction. And now it's going on number 20. And it's just the macro goal, micro goal process that worked for that as well.
Man, okay. Well, any advice, civilian, military, kids that might be interested in enlisting? Any advice you'd give about mental toughness, perseverance, reaching beyond boundaries?
Well, John, people like you, I think, are doing such a great service to our country, and you're serving in a way that's every bit as important as anybody in the military is serving, because you're helping people in our communities. What I'd like to say is, if you look around your family or your neighborhood or your community and you think someone might need a helping hand, just reach out to them. Maybe if it's a little bit more than that, maybe it's a little bit more than what you can do, maybe have them talk to you or people like you. And just, I think we all have to take better care of one another. And I really commend you for what you do for your profession. It's very commendable. And as far as the military goes,
thank you.
Of course, the military, if there weren't people like you, when people get out of the military, they need people like you. And maybe before going into the military, they better talk to people like you to make sure they're going in for the right reasons. Some people are going in for the wrong reasons. And so I really commend you for what you're doing, and I appreciate the time with you today.
Well, man, I'm honored. Right back at you. Thank you so much for your years of service. I mean, you continue to serve with the Sears training and like all the different stuff that you do, the motivational speaking. So, like I said at the beginning, I'm just so honored to get a chance to talk to you. So, thank you.
Thank you, John.
I definitely look forward to staying in touch with you and keeping an eye on all the different races, different books, different projects, all the irons you have in the fire. So I'll definitely double back around and reach out to you again.
Excellent. I look forward to that.
Take care.
Okay. Good luck with everything you're doing, John.
As always, a huge thank you to our listeners and to our guests for making this episode possible. Again, go to usfrogmann.com and just check out what Don is about, what he's done, his books. Like I said, he's just such an amazing guy. I've had the privilege of spending time with him at his home and just being willing to sit down and talk with me, have a drink, and just share, his crazy off-the-wall experiences and what he's learned throughout his life and the different things that he's learned through, pushing himself and, like he was saying, going over the line, way far over the line and dangerously over the line, and learning that it's important to know where that line is and touch the line, but not go over it on purpose as much as possible. So, again, I really hope that you guys got as much value out of that as I did. I know that it's something that I've put into daily use since learning about him and his books. So I hope you enjoyed it. In OTC episode 23, I'll be speaking about preparing your child to go back to school and dealing with school anxiety. This is your host, John Dennis, saying good night. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe and review wherever you're catching this podcast at. You can check out detailed show notes and archived episodes at www.pfsonthecouch.com. If you want to stay up to date on future guests and contribute questions, be sure to follow us on your favorite social media platforms. The author and host of this podcast is not engaged in a therapeutic relationship with the listener and cannot give counseling advice without a confidential appointment. Listeners should be sure to consult with a licensed therapist in their area or seek emergency medical attention if they are experiencing psychological difficulty. A special thanks to the band The Topsy-Turvies for the show theme song. Their song, Like a Living Dead, can be found at topsyturvies.bandcamp.com. The bump interview track was the song 1973 by Bruno E. The author and host of this podcast is John Dennis. Special thanks to editor and show producer Trevor Groff.